Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Join me today. She's a country music artist and songwriter. It's Payton Howie. How are you doing today, Payton?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do first with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up?
So I was born and raised in Southern California. That's kind of, where I was like about 16 years old when I got my first guitar, and I started teaching myself how to play, just, watching videos on YouTube and just listening to how things sounded. And I taught myself to play. And so about that same age, 15, 16 years old, I started playing shows around in my hometown. And it was real cool. There was lots of open mics and little, places that were, very open to having young artists come in and just play while they're getting their start. And I was lucky enough to have so many seasoned artists that were, around in my hometown that were just allowing me to learn from them and giving me advice. And so that's kind of how I got my start in the industry, I would say. That's how I started playing shows. And from there, I just started, writing original music, recording original music, putting it out. And now I'm lucky enough to be able to play shows all across the country and, getting to put out more music. I have so much coming in the following months of the rest of the year and especially next year. So it's going good so far.
Before you got that first guitar, was music something that you had a passion for growing up?
Actually, yeah, I've always been like a musical person. Even before I learned to play guitar, I used to just sing. I used to sing everything, like pop music, country, classic rock music, and just like everything that you could think of. And I was always like singing it. And I remember like when I was probably like 6th or 7th grade, like one of my friends and we went and did like a singing talent show. Like we did the cup song and like we totally won like $50. And it was, so I've always just loved music, and I love, singing and playing the piano. I have a little bit of experience playing, like a keyboard or a piano or whatever. And guitar is kind of more my favorite now, I have to say, but I honestly started playing that before I was playing guitar. So yes, I did have a little bit of a musical background before that.
Who were your music idols? Someone that you kind of were inspired to be or you grew up listening to?
So I remember it was a while back. I think it was around 2005. Carrie Underwood put out her Some Hearts album. And by the way, to this day, that is still my favorite album that she has out. It's so good. Like there's not one song on there that like, as you grow up and go through life, there's not one song on there that is not just relatable. So she was out on tour, and my mom took me to a concert of hers as my very first concert. And I was about, I would say, 5 years old. And I totally was like always listening to her music no matter what. And so I was dancing out in the aisles, and the lights were like panning across the audience, and they like stopped on me while I was dancing in the aisles. And so she like squatted down and like stopped singing, and she told her bodyguard, "Hey, go get that little girl." So she brought me up on stage with her, and I was like super starstruck. She was holding my hand, and we were singing, and she, like just getting to see like all the like this sea of like people like in their faces, just like all singing this song and like having a good time and coming together through music, I guess, is what really moved me in that moment. And so I would say definitely Carrie Underwood is one of those artists that's like, kind of sparked that in me, kind of was an inspiration.
I mean, Carrie has had such a journey in her career, going from American Idol to now to the road that she's gone, the awards, the passion her fan base has. It kind of just shows that she's had that kind of success in a very positive way. I mean, it's never been anything negative or something bad has been going on. Is that kind of the path that you're trying to go throughout your music career? You want to have that success that's more natural, not like kind of like behind the scene dirty in a way.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, that's honestly, if I could choose, I will say that I don't think a lot of people get to choose that, but if I could, that would be great. And, it's like, I think looking at Carrie Underwood specifically, and also a lot of other like really successful artists, like, like Taylor Swift, that just branched completely out of where they started. Like if you look at Carrie Underwood starting out, one of her, first hit songs being like Jesus Take the Wheel, very like, kind of more country style. And she was, with Before He Cheats and blown away and like moving up. And now she's like, I'm going to put out a gospel album just because she can, you know, because she's Carrie Underwood. And I think that's the same thing with Taylor Swift. She started out, you know, doing country, and now she's all like doing pop and all this crazy stuff. So, I mean, I think it's like artists like that have a true talent, whether it's, you know, vocally or, you know, performance wise, like Garth Brooks, or like songwriting style. I think no matter what your talent is, if you have that amazing, unique talent, you can pretty much do whatever you want in the industry.
When did you know that you kind of wanted to take music as a career path? Was it hard making that decision? Did your parents not understand at that time, or have they been full supportive in your journey?
My parents have always been just the most supportive. I mean, they've always been there, you know, saying like, hey, like if this is what you want to do, like do it all the way. Like if this is what you want to do, make sure that you're giving it your all and not just like, you know, just kind of throwing it in there, you know,
Mhm.
make sure that you're like giving it your all and going 100%. And they've always done the best that they can to, you know, guide me in the right way and help me know what to do, even though the music industry is like an ever changing thing, you know, it's never like a by the book, you know.
Yep.
So my parents have always been there supporting and helping through that, and I couldn't ask for a better support system, honestly.
You talked about living in Southern California. Do you think it was a disadvantage not being in the traditional country music scene areas? Or do you think that gave you a brand identity to come out and be yourself and show people this is who I am as a musician?
You know, it's interesting you say that. I've never been asked that question, but it's definitely something I've thought a lot about because over the last few months, I would say within the last year, I have been playing a lot of shows out in Texas. And, you know, I mean, Texas and Southern California are two completely different worlds. And I think anyone can agree with that, you know? So playing shows out there, you know, maybe like in the middle of nowhere, just, you know, some crazy like honky tonk shows. And people are like, oh man, where are you from? And I'm like, I guess you probably you would never guess. You'll never know, you know, and it's just real funny to, and I tell people like, oh, I'm originally from Southern California. And they're like, no way, you know? So, I mean, it is interesting because a lot of parts of the country music industry specifically are not, I don't know, I wouldn't say they're not fond of it, but they don't think, oh, Southern California, country music.
Mhm.
They don't think that, you know? So, especially me being the kind of artist that's like, you know, I want to write about like real true country music stories. I want to be like that gritty country style. And then, you know, people thinking, oh, you're from California, it's like it kind of always, you know, pops a question in people's minds. So I wouldn't say it's a disadvantage, just something that is rather unique to people when I tell them that, you know. And I mean, especially spending a lot of time out in Nashville, a lot of people are from all over the place. So there it's not
Yep.
as unique, but in certain states, you know, traveling and having like toured a bit, it's definitely interesting to see people's reaction when I tell them where I'm from.
I think you brought up a great point with making your story unique. Like when people are asking about where you're from and stuff, and you're telling them, I think it makes them more interested in your background and your story. Because when musicians, I'm not a musician now, but we know that when people are writing songs, you can kind of see the similarities from different stories, and they're writing similar, but even though they're from completely different areas in the world, but still it's the passion that we see from all artists all over the world. I mean, I think that's what makes it great, that you can be a singer and live anywhere, but if it's all about the passion that you have, you can make any dream a reality.
Oh yeah, and that's the truth because I think if you really look at it, a lot of the greatest, you know, artists of today, whether it's country or any other genre, uh, I mean, a lot of them you can't even really think about where they're from, and it doesn't really
Yep.
matter. You know, some of your favorite artists, I guarantee you, like a lot of people don't know where their favorite artists are from, and that's one thing that I've come to think about is like it doesn't even really matter. It's more just about like the vibe you put off and if you mean it, you know.
At the age of 16, when you got the guitar, you were starting out in your musician career. What kind of songs were you writing? Were you mostly writing about your personal stories or things that you've been seeing? What was going through your mind at that time?
You know, I think especially as a young songwriter, there's so much doubt. There's so much like, oh, does this sound good or is this awful or like, does this sound horrible? And I think the best advice that I've gotten from so many seasoned artists and songwriters is just write. Even if it's the worst thing you've ever written, just keep writing and never stop writing, because eventually, you're going to write 100 bad songs till you get one good one. And so keeping that in my mind as a 16-year-old, I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. And I mean, but honestly, a lot of, good things come out of that, because I've personally grown so much as a songwriter over the last few years, just having been influenced by artists, kind of on my level, and artists that are, huge and just all over the place. But F-150, one of my singles from, I would say, a while back, it was actually not the first song. That's the first song that I remember thinking, like, I actually want to record this, F-150. And that was, I wrote that when I was 16. So that was one of the songs that I wrote at that time. And it's interesting because looking at it now, I think, oh my gosh, like I was such, I had just gotten my truck, and, I was just started driving and all that. And so listening to that song, it's so crazy, because to me, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like, I wrote it, it's a song. But a lot of my supporters or fan base, they love that song. Like that's their favorite song. And it's crazy because I put it out and I didn't think anything of it, and then it went crazy, and it ended up getting like over 100,000 streams in like some odd month. And now it's almost over. It's way over 250,000 streams on Spotify, and Spotify alone. And I was like, where did that come from? And everyone was like, man, that song is so good. When did you write that? And I was like 16. So I know it's so weird sometimes to think that, if you write something or I write something, to me, it might just be but like to you, you might love it, and vice versa. Like I've heard certain songs from fellow songwriters where they're like, oh, what do you think of this? I just threw it together. And I'm like, that's amazing. That is amazing, So everyone has a different perspective, and like every song you write touches people differently, for sure.
I was about to say, if that song was not about a truck, I would be so confused, because I'm like, F-150, is she talking about a Ford truck right now or something?
Right. Oh yeah. No, it is. And it's funny because I know so many people are like, that song, it's my favorite song of yours. And I'm like, okay, awesome, but I'm not complaining. I mean, it's a part of my songwriting and growing, for sure.
When those fans are listening to your songs, are they connecting with like certain words or the theme and messaging of it? And how do you handle, like, what do you like about that when they're giving you that kind of feedback?
Well, something that I've learned from hearing like what people say about the song, is people. Okay, so F-150, the song itself, it's a pretty generic idea. Like it's not like the words that I use in that song are not very specific, talking about a specific feeling. It's very, very generic, but you can tell it's kind of like the overall vibe is, I go off-roading and I tear up a dirt lot in my truck when I'm feeling down or when I need to get something off my mind. That's basically the gist of the song. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but artists on Spotify and other, streaming platforms, we can go and see the names of playlists that our songs are added to. So I look at a lot of playlists that F-150 specifically is added to, and it's like breakup songs to scream in your car. It's the best stuff. And I love seeing that. And I'm like, I never would have thought that it meant that to you. But I mean, I love hearing people say that, like, the vibe is so chill, and, it's just like, it's a rockin' song, or I love the instrumentation. I've heard it all about that one too. So
that's so interesting. You go from calm to breakup songs. It's kind of like, that's definitely Spotify right there.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's definitely a nice little tool to have to get to see like what people classify your song as in their in their listening library. I love it.
It's almost like you're going on the same track as Carrie Underwood. One of her songs is a breakup song. It's like, oh, you're following in that path right now.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I would say that I think it's nice as an artist to have like a different array of songs that you've written. Some that are softer, and some that are just like straight outright, party vibes. I think all over the place. I think it'd be good sometimes, because I don't think any person only has one facet to who they are. I think everybody has, different facets, for sure.
Let's talk about when you're creating a music video. Some of the songs that you've written, you've created a video. Do you put a lot of thought, or do you use a team to come up with the image that you're trying to show in the video?
Yeah, so as of now, I've under my belt, I've shot 2 music videos. The first one I did was for Freedom, the single I put out on Memorial Day weekend, and it's out now. Freedom, the music video is out now. And the second one that I shot was for my upcoming single, Never Go Home, which I'm super stoked about. But Freedom was a very, I would say it was a very intricate planned video, if that makes any sense, because when you listen to the song, there's a story behind it. And we really wanted this video to be like a mini movie because it tells a story. And for anyone that might have missed it while listening to the song, we wanted to paint that picture and to get people to really connect with that song on a deeper level. And so, yeah, there was a lot of thought that went into sitting down and writing out, we're going to have this happen here and this happen here. And the intricate details of even like having the pamphlet, like the military enlistment pamphlet in his hand, and it kind of like leans down, as we're like hugging or whatever, and you can see just like the intricate details that totally change the story and that make the video what it is. So there is definitely a lot of planning that goes into it. I usually try and start brainstorming on my own, like even as I'm writing the song. I always get way ahead of myself. I'm like writing a song, I'm not even done with the song, and I'm like, this was really cool on a t-shirt, but yeah, there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and I did have an amazing team behind both videos, so definitely could not have done that without any of them, so it was awesome.
When you're performing during the video, do you ever get uncomfortable, or do you look at it as I'm acting, this is what's happening, it's all for the fans and stuff?
Well, I definitely was a little awkward during the first few shots, which obviously aren't in the music video. Thank you. But I felt a little uncomfortable at first because when I'm performing on stage, I'm just like letting myself just express and sing and play. And I'm not necessarily trying to like look good, but it's a video. So you're like, okay, like I kind of have to look somewhat presentable, I kind of have to look somewhat good. So, yes, I did. I think there was times in the music video, I will say like the football scene, the football stadium shot, that one I felt the most like myself in because I just got to stand there and just sing the song like for like an hour. Like we literally were sitting there and I was singing the song and just having a good time. And I think honestly that was probably one of my favorite scenes was the football stadium scene because it was like getting ready to pour rain and it was getting dark outside and like they had the lights come on and it was super cool and it was just like end of the day and it was really cool. That and the coming home scene when the Marine comes home, I think that was probably one of my favorite shots because I actually got to have a lot of my friends and family there and it was really cool. It felt really natural to just like be around everyone and just have a good time. So certain parts were a little uncomfortable, but I'd say there was a lot of really easy parts to film too.
Are your friends always asking you to let them be in your music videos all the time?
Sometimes it's kind of funny. The dancers in the video are they're literally like a whole group of friends that I hang out with like all the time. They're like, more my like, hey, let's, have a good time, friends, and it's funny because they're all like professional, like college team dancers. And I'm like, wow, you guys are really good. So when I played them the song for the first time, they're like, oh, we're going to make a dance to this. And they made it. And I was like, you guys want to be in a music video? So when I went to go film the next video for my new single, Never Go Home, they were like, oh my gosh, we got to be in this one. And then so everyone was all excited for that. But yeah, I definitely get that a lot sometimes, only if they know about it.
Have you been able to kind of differentiate your personal life and your career life? Have you been able to be positive with both instead of having one being the main focus and kind of leaving your personal life in the background?
Well, I will say that that's something that I've tried to work on a lot, especially recently. I love music and music is a part of who I am. So it's kind of hard to separate the two because a lot of the time when I'm, I get a free moment and I'm like, hey, I want to go like just sit in my room away from everyone and write a song. like technically I'm still working, you know,
Mhm.
but like it's still something that I love and it's a part of my life. So I try to separate it on certain parts of like the spectrum because it's important, but other times it's, I will say that music has definitely brought a lot into my personal life that I didn't have there before. Lots of friends and, you know, close, like, you know, teammates that I've gotten to connect with just through music. Like some of my best friends are also musicians that I would never have met if I wasn't doing music, and from all over the country and places like I've people I never would have talked to that I've just like had come into my life that I'm so grateful for because of music. So yes, I try to separate it, but it's still brought a lot of good things into my personal life too.
I think that's awesome to hear that music has kind of brought so much positive in your life. And I think a lot of people that they have these passion projects or careers and they're introduced to all these new people and they become such like a family to them. And I can
Right.
say the same thing about doing this show that I've met so many people that I can talk to even after doing the episode because you feel like you know so much about them in the short amount of time that you're speaking to them. But I can just hear the passion that you have for music. And it's going to be amazing to see what this future has for you and all the amazing things that you're going to be doing when you're off 30 years from now in this career.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So let's talk about when you're on stage, that first concert, big performance. Were there nerves? What was going through your mind mentally? Were you excited? Were you like, this is a huge opportunity for me?
I will say there are definitely a lot of times that I'm still very nervous. Like I hear some of my friends or, you know, bigger artists or whatever that say like, oh no, I don't get nervous. And I'm like, you are lying. You're straight up lying. Cause like I always get nervous, and not even because like, you know, I'm afraid or anything like that, just because music is important to me and I want it to be like,
Yep.
you know, good. I want to do well with it. Plus I care about the people that are listening to it. So I always get nervous. I get nervous when I'm performing. I get nervous when I'm getting ready to put out a new song or anything like that. Yeah, but I would say a couple of big shows that I've done that like I remember maybe I think it was almost 2 years ago now. Um, I was playing the House of Blues in Anaheim, California, and it was pretty cool, crazy sold out show. And like, I mean, it was probably the first really big show I'd ever played 2 years ago. And it was, I think, maybe like 3,000 people. And it was like, I was super nervous. I remember going out on stage and I was super excited. I wasn't like scared, but I was really nervous. And I remember singing the song and I did well and I came off stage and I was like, don't remember anything. I didn't remember a single thing. And I remember like my family and friends showing me videos and they're like, you did great. And I was like, I don't remember a single thing. But yeah, I've gotten better with that. Like sometimes when I'm playing, maybe like the first song, I'm pretty nervous, you know? But then as like the set goes on, it's more just like having fun and just playing music with people and getting to share it with them, you know?
Do you have a favorite performance, like a favorite venue concert that you've done in your journey so far?
Wow. That's hard. I would have to say maybe my most favorites. Definitely the House of Blues was so fun. Anaheim House of Blues was really fun. And just recently I got to play up at Austin City Limits, the Moody Theater up there. That was insane. That was so much fun. They literally like they sold the whole thing out. It was up there for the Taco Margarita Festival with Brie Bagwell, and it was super fun. They sold it out. I don't even remember how many people it was. I think it was like 1,500 people, and it was like just insane to just get to play there, and everyone was so lively and having a good time, and everyone was all dressed all weird, and it was just the coolest thing. I remember, and I got to play a longer set, so like, you know, obviously I worked through like being a little nervous or whatever, and then we just had such a good time. Like was getting to post pictures and you know, just have a good time with everyone that was there, and people were singing along, and that's always like such a blast. So those are probably my two favorites so far.
Is there a concert or like a performance that you're hoping in the next few years that you're going to get that call to perform on that stage?
Well, I think as basic as it might sound, always a dream of mine is always going to be I want to play the Opry. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
You know, I want to play the Opry or the Ryman. Like obviously that is probably one of my biggest goals is to be able to play on those two stages because like every time, you know, someone debuts or anytime I get an opportunity to watch it, you know, I'm always like sitting there watching. Oh, that's so cool. I've been there quite a few times and gotten to see a couple artists, you know, do their first performances there or just some returning performances. So those two would definitely be like on the top of my list.
Well, it's all the amazing performers that have been on there and being able to step foot on there and kind of say,
Oh,
I
yeah.
performed here at the same as someone else. It's just, I mean, the Opry is basically the one that everyone talks about because the legacy that it has with every performer.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah. No doubt about that.
Looking at your journey, is there anything that you would have changed? Or do you think that the journey you've been on to get to where you are has been exactly how you envisioned it because it's taught you a lot about yourself and the growth as a musician and an artist?
You know, honestly, I wouldn't change a thing because I think everything that I've encountered and everything that I've done and everything that I haven't done in the last few years has taught me something, even if I don't want to admit it, you know, even if there's some things where like, why did I do that? That was the biggest waste or whatever. Even if I think that or feel that in like in my heart, you know, I know that it taught me something and that at least I know now that I'll never do it again. You know what I'm saying? So I would say I definitely wouldn't change anything because I do think that all the good and all the bad has led me to where I am today and I'm happy with where I'm at and but obviously I'm, you know, more than excited to keep going and work my way up the ladder and ride the wave. So I definitely wouldn't change a thing, but you know, I'm still working it and I definitely want to keep going as far as I can.
What's the biggest thing you've learned about yourself during this time?
I would say the biggest thing that I've learned about myself is I think a lot of the time I kind of I'm not like I'm more of an introverted person sometimes, you know. I don't always like to be just like, hey, like how's it going? It's kind of weird considering that I'm a performer, which is very weird. But I would say that the biggest thing that I've learned is that the best way to approach something is to be myself. Like when I've been the most nervous for shows or for meeting important people or you know making new friends in the industry or you know anything out there, even recording or having a certain sound, it's the best outcome for me has been when I've just like been myself and not tried to be something that I'm not. And anytime that I do try to fake something or manufacture it, it always never feels real, which is so funny to me because I think a lot of the time, like people always, you know, get caught up in the, you know, selling out or whatever. So obviously I'm, you know, never going to try and be that. I never want to try and do that, but I will definitely say that like, even just in these last few years that I've been doing this and playing shows, I've just seen that like when I'm just like being myself, even if I'm saying something super goofy or saying something that may not make sense to everybody else or saying something that might be, you know, hard to understand, I will say that it's definitely had the best outcome when I'm just being myself for sure.
Have you ever had a moment where someone or somebody has found, like you said something and you weren't being authentic and it's kind of messed with you in a way? And that's how you know that you have to be yourself because you see people all over the world when they're not themselves, they get into much trouble and it's just a domino effect then on after.
That's a good question. I will say that I think that times when I've not been being real or times when I've not been being myself, it's almost like I'm just going through the motions.
Hmm.
And I can feel that about myself. Like when I'm just like, oh yeah, blah 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 or whatever, you know, I'm just going through the motions. But when I actually get to like sit down and like talk with people or um write like you know those feelings like when you write a song and then you play it for someone and they're like, man, that really hit home. Those are the kind of the things that just like rejuvenate and just reignite that fire to be like, yeah, this is why I'm doing this. Whenever it's just, oh yeah, I'm doing this and checking all the boxes, then it feels like I'm not being authentic for sure. So I've definitely felt that. And that's kind of how I've felt, that I'm like, okay, I don't want to fall into being that ever, because then there's no point, you know?
So what does the future look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish personally and professionally?
I will say that I literally want to just play shows all over the place. I've had the opportunity to, in the last few months, travel to quite a few different states and meet tons of like new people. And I'm working on a project coming up that I'm getting just way too excited to release, which I'm super excited to put out new music. I want to keep writing better songs. I want to be a better songwriter. I want to keep working on that. And I want to make more connections with people that are, going that same way, that are doing that same thing. Because I think that's like, when you're doing something difficult, or you're doing something that's challenging, or unique, like there's not a lot of people that are trying to pursue a career in the music industry, like just walking around, I mean, there
Mhm.
are a lot of people that are trying to do it, but I mean, like, for example, when I graduated high school, there was no one else in my graduating class that was trying to do what I was trying to do. So, I mean, I want to try and find those people that are trying to do that, and, keep those people in my circle and help them, and like, have them help me, and just kind of make friendships that way, writing songs, and um, just trying to grow as an artist and as a person as well. So that's kind of where I'm hoping to do, and getting excited to put out some new music for sure.
You talked about interaction during this last year when we weren't able to travel or go and perform live and be fans in the attendance. Was that a hard thing for you? And how did you motivate yourself to continue writing and being able to play music, even though you couldn't do the normal concert kind of style?
I think the greatest tool through all of that was social media and live streams, and, all Instagram, Facebook lives, all that stuff was so helpful. And I was able to just like connect with, my followers and my supporters through that. And it was super cool because, I was able to talk with people that are all the way on the other side of the country, and others, like, different parts of the world. And that was probably the way that I stayed most connected to those people. And putting on virtual concerts like every Tuesday and Thursday, a lot of people were doing that. And a lot of people were doing, sponsored live streams. I had a couple, different fellow venue owners and community, like company owners that were like, hey, like, we're gonna hop on here, and you're gonna talk about our product. It was super cool to just to have everyone come together on the internet and just kind of have these virtual concerts. I think that was probably the greatest thing to come from the whole pandemic thing, because honestly, now I've still tried to carry that into, just my everyday routine on my social media and stuff like that. Is like, when I get the chance, going live and I did a virtual release party for one of my singles back in like last summer. I did a virtual release party, and it was super cool. So and plus, having, traveled a lot lately and not being able to always be home, it's nice to have the ability to connect with my, my supporters from back home, and supporters from places that I've been. So social media and the live streams definitely have been like the lifeline through all that.
It's amazing the power of technology nowadays, because
Oh, it
think
really is.
about the artists back then couldn't do that, but we have the luxury of being able to do that and continue. And you kind of made a big point on it, growing your audience, the interaction, everyone being together and listening to your songs. It shows the amazing fan base that the music industry has with their artists.
Oh yeah, it's super cool, and it's like great to have that tool and not only like learn from it, but then we can now like integrate it into our
Yep.
everyday routine of, growing our careers, and interacting with like the people that are supporting us and out there listening to our music. Like, that is so cool. I love having the ability to connect with those people that are from, all over the place.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Definitely, something that I said earlier was definitely be yourself, because man, it can get so crazy when you're trying to be something that you're not, and it can get so crazy when you're trying to fit into a box or whatever that someone else is trying to fit you into, that's the worst thing, because that's when you lose that passion or the desire you have to do what you're doing. So I would definitely say stay true to yourself, and always be grateful for those that are around you, supporting you, and being there, and whatever it is, even if it's just a little bit, or people that are full on just there for you through everything. So that's definitely what I would say. And also, I'm really, really grateful for everyone out there that's been like listening to my music or supporting me, or anything that y'all have done. I appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Well, Payton, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talk about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we're excited to see what the future has for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.